Hello, I will advise that you hold back your emotions because what I'm going to show you in this may evoke some kind of emotions and it may lead. If ever you were told that there was a time that the Nigerian nation was a darling of the world, would you ever believe that? Now I'm going to show you this. It is unfortunate that there was a time that the mighty American president would invite the then prime minister of this for them to foster relationship and to collaborate, nation build. And this was not as master to slave mentality that we have shown then, was that of honor, to the point that dignified individuals from the government of America came out to the airport where the delegates of the Nigerian government led the then Prime Minister Balewa. Would you also believe that there was a time that the citizens of America lined up the street to actually wave flags and welcome a leader coming? This country has suddenly become an eyesore. Almost all our African countries, African neighboring, don't see us. They don't have any form of regard. Now, for a very long time, we've not government. Every time I think of Nigeria, every time I discuss about Nigeria, it evokes some form of sadness, bitterness. But there is something that is going on in this country that if care is not taken, every individual soul actually. I like you to first and foremost sit and watch when Nigeria is a darling of the whole. I'll be back. Please take leave. Touch.
You are welcome to the End Time Truth Television, the channel for the lovers of truth, for the truth of the end time. So if you are a lover of truth, give us a subscription and God bless you. Shalom.
America is waiting for the arrival in Washington of the Prime Minister of the Federation of Nigeria, Alhaji Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. Prime Minister Balewa is making an official visit to America at the invitation of the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. Waiting at the airport to greet him are Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, Secretary of State Dean Rusk, Mr. Joseph Palmer, the American Ambassador to Nigeria, and other high-ranking American officials. Accompanying the Prime Minister is Minister of Foreign Affairs Wachuku, Ambassador Udochi, and Minister Shagari and Benson, and other key members of the Nigerian government.
Mr. Prime Minister, I am honored to welcome you and the distinguished members of your party to the United States. This welcome is only the beginning. You will find as you travel through this country a very deep and genuine interest in the exciting developments which are taking place in your country and in Africa today.
I am very pleased to be with you in Washington today, and I look forward to the week which we are to spend among you. I have no doubt that the American people will receive us with all the kindness that they all receive strangers. This is just a brief reply to your very warm address of welcome. Thank you.
Many friendly Americans are waiting to welcome Sir Abubakar to his home in Washington. During his stay in the American capital, the distinguished visitor will reside at the Blair House, the special residence for guests of the American president. Just across the street from the Blair House is the White House, where President Kennedy awaits Prime Minister Balewa. The two leaders are meeting to discuss matters of mutual and international interest. In a joint communique summarizing the outcome of their deliberations, they reaffirm their support for the principle of self-determination for dependent peoples and their unalterable opposition to racial discrimination under any name or in any guise. President Kennedy expressed his pleasure at the success.
Yes, that thing you saw there, the people you saw there were presidents, ministers and the prime minister. You know, in those days, the prime minister was more powerful than the president. There was a president, I think that was Zeke, but then the prime minister actually the one who had the authority, you know, by his own signatures. The country was being ruled that time. So the people you saw there were not from UK, they came from Nigeria. And those on the streets were Americans. And this is the same Nigeria today that the green passport is an eyesore. And just mention that you're from Nigeria, you know, when discussing with somebody, see how abrupt the person may end conversation, except few occasions where people who still know that there are a men of integrity in Nigeria. Now, it is the same Nigeria now that's grappling with hunger. Now, this hunger seems to have been, you know, premeditated, and it has been a kind of thought of, even though that, yes, during the last electioneering campaign, the presidential election, the country was already in a total mess, but not as messy as what we are having now. And one of the presidential candidates, you know, of that time had some acronyms that he talked about. Is it Agbado or Eba? What is it? Cassava. Now, and
for what? Is it for Eba? Is it for Gary?
Reflex.
Is it for beans? I don't know. For what? Is it for Eba? Is it for Gary? Is it for beans? I don't know. Eba, Gary, beans. I don't know. Eba, Gary, beans. I don't know. Agbado, cassava, corn, yam. Agbado, cassava, corn, yam. Eba.
Even though those things were not promised, but somehow we are at a point where we are actually in dire need of those things, because they are staple foods that the most popular that the Nigerian populace spend on feed family. But unfortunately, we are not having those things. We're not easily having them as is now. You don't. And so the government seem to have run out of ideas on what to do and how to combat hunger. And so the next thing that they have done, have approved the adoption of GMO seeds, despite of that your president of this country has allegedly approved the usage of genetically modified organisms as food. Now, we're looking at this and we're going to briefly talk about the areas of my concern, and if it somehow sometimes how will a people be so adamant in just fulfilling their own personal interests at the detriment of, yes, there have been concerns over this GMO food, and the question we need to ask, how well did the Nigerian government research in order to find out if this is true or not? Now, there are numerous challenges associated with genetically modified that we must address. GMOs have been linked to cancers, diseases, allergies, and a variety of health problems as a result of environmental consequences, such as their reliance on toxic pesticides and the loss of biodiversity and nutritional diversity. Now, one of the characteristics of this GMO is that insects don't eat. So you plant them, they grow like that. Insects don't eat them. That means that in the inside of it, they already have insecticide in the inside. That is why insects cannot bite them. And the question is, how safe is this kind of thing that is already containing pesticides and insecticides in the inside? And that is not just the only problem. We'll discuss other problems associated with these things as the video progresses. But then you ask yourself, do they really care? Do the people in power care about you and me? You ask me, who do I ask? But you can see the sign everywhere. Even though, yes, they have come out and they said, some of them have said that it is safe. But how do we trust the people that have consistently lied to the people to get the people's vote? And sometimes even when the votes were not given to them, they obtain it by force. So how do you trust this kind of a people? It is trusting them at your own perils. Now, listen to the argument that was proffered by one of them.
A coalition of Nigeria's agricultural research system led by the Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria maintains that genetically modified crops are safe and pose no harm to humans, animals, and the environment. The group, comprising of National Biotechnology Research and Development Agency, the National Agricultural Seed Council, the National Agricultural Quarantine Service, Shedder Science and Technology Complex, and the National Biosafety Management Agency, the Government Focal Agency for the Regulation of GMOs, unanimously affirmed that the safety and benefits of genetically modified crops is immeasurable. The coalition's position comes on the heels of the recent media campaign against GM technology in the country. Speaking at a news conference in Abuja, the researchers explained that the GMOs continue to serve as a tool towards the realization of food security.
The telomeres that recently sparked intense controversy and concerns, with many questioning its safety and environmental impact, is a transgenic, drought-tolerant and insect-protected maize variety designed to thrive in challenging climatic conditions. Its commercial release is expected to enhance food security in sub-Saharan Africa by increasing crop yield, enhancing resilience to pests and diseases, and reducing the environmental impact. Also, improving nutritional content for the health benefit of the populace. Having gone through this rigorous testing and evaluation processes to ensure its safety for consumption and the environment, telomeres is safe and not harmful to humans and environment.
Now, Nimo Bassi, Executive Director of HOMEF, stated that it is completely unacceptable for the country to expose its citizens to risky technologies in the name of food security without conducting adequate, independent, and/or long-term assessments of their effects on human and environmental health. There are numerous challenges associated with the genetically modified crops that we must address. Now, he emphasized that the government should conduct independent long-term feeding tests as well as environmental biodiversity assessments before approving any GMO crop for use, rather than simply testing for productivity or performance. Joyce Brown, HOMEF's Director of Programs and the project lead for hunger politics, added, GMOs are not required to feed our population. Over the centuries, our farmers have carefully selected and preserved seed, crop, and animal varieties. They have kept a supply of various types that provide food, medicine, and other necessities. They upheld biodiversity protecting norms. Open cultivation and the commercial release of teller maize endangers our farmers' lives and livelihoods. Talk about endangering the farmers' lives. We're going to get into that because it seems that somebody is hell-bent on introducing this in order to sell his agenda to, the government of this country. You hear about, the concern. Now, has these people who came out and say that it is safe, have they actually done their own findings? Did they actually test? How long did they test on how did they do it before coming to conclusion that it is safe? Now, whatever is coming from Bill Gates to Africa must actually be scrutinized. All right. So you guess if Bill Gates is part of it, then it is business one, and then you can also understand why it must be forced on African leaders. It must be African leaders must be coerced. Don't just be, in a haste first and listen to what he and his wife then said. Of course, this has been, in the agenda for long. It's not just something that they started today. And you see, when it has to do with World Economic Forum, you know what that organization stands for. It is the One World Order. it is the new world order, the one world, government move. And so Bill Gates is linked to this, and Bill Gates is, gaining access, with African leaders. Yes, he's a billionaire, we understand, and their wealth speaks for them wherever they go. But somehow he's becoming actually an acting prime minister, so to speak, in this country, because he is not just only introducing foods, he's also addressing and advising the country. Listen to this.
Just a quick question about farming. You both have talked about how digital technologies from mobile phones to sequencing genomes of seeds could play a very big role in farming in Africa. How big of a role do you see small farmers playing in this effort? Are you focusing on bigger farmers? Just how is this going to play out?
We are quite focused on smallholder farmers because the predominant number of Africans farming today are smallholder farmers, and they're on pieces of land that are less than 2 hectares, so it's quite a small farm. There are agro dealers that exist in these countries. We need to get that network up and running, just like we've got the vaccine network up and running and getting vaccines out, getting up and running so they're teaching people proper planting, proper fertilize, proper irrigation, and getting them new seeds as they come out. There's fantastic technology going on for pest-resistant seeds, for drought-resistant seeds, flood-resistant seeds as the rains come at different times. And so as people are educated about them and they start to see their neighbors getting, a third more yield off their farm, they say, I want those. So getting those systems up and running. Again, one of the most promising places we see that happening is Ethiopia today. They really have gotten their infrastructure and agriculture working, and that will lift up not just farmers on their own farm so they have more to eat, but they can put it on the local market, and it lifts up the economy.
Mm-hmm. There's been talk of gene editing and really getting high tech with seeds. Of course, there's some controversy over that. How big of a role do you think technology and gene editing may be used to really tackle the food problem?
Yeah, what are called GMOs are done by changing the genes of the plant, and it's done in a way where there's a very thorough safety procedure. And it's pretty incredible because it reduces the amount of pesticide you need, raises productivity, can help with malnutrition by getting vitamin fortification. And, so I think for Africa, this is going to make a huge difference, particularly as they face climate change, the increased productivity and resilience of the seeds, most of which will come from the new scientific techniques. So the gene editing just allows that to be done in a more precise way than it's ever been done in the past. So it'll accelerate the rate of innovation.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a certain naivete that without that it could be done anyway? That you've seen the results on the ground of conventional.
The Africans, it's up in the air, and Kenya just approved BT maize. The Europeans have decided they don't want to use it, most of them, which is fine. They're not facing malnutrition and starvation. If they want to pay a premium for food of a kind, it's not a huge deal. The U.S., China, Brazil are using these things, and if you want farmers in Africa to improve nutrition and be competitive on the world market, as long as the right safety things are done, that's really beneficial. It's kind of a second round of the green revolution, and so the Africans, I think, will choose to let their people have enough to eat.
I don't know what you make of this, but if somebody who is alive had made this kind of damning allegation against the government of this country and an individual such as the man you listened to, in the previous chat, Bill Gates, I don't know how and when the government rose up to investigate this. And if you put 1 + 1 together, my friend, you will always arrive at 2. There are so much that this man spoke about. That tells you the reason why there is so much hunger. So it's like hunger is being weaponized in order to achieve a certain agenda that is very dark and deep. Don't go away after this, because it has also spread across to Kenya. And it is more serious in Kenya now that we know very soon it will come to Nigeria. It is just a matter of time. So what do we listen to Professor Dr. Philip Njemani as he talked about the heinous crime and wickedness of Bill Gates that he intends to perpetrate this country.
And doctors.
Recently, you raised an alarm through a letter you transmitted to the National Assembly, the Senate specifically. And in that letter, you touched the whole world. You copied the UN, you copied ILO, you copied the Conference of Bishops in Africa, Asia, Europe, you touched everywhere in the world. And you talked about a planned genocide of doctors in Nigeria. It's very disturbing. Can you explain or expand on that and let us know what is happening really?
What the West is looking at is that they envisage a new human industry. The new human industry will make it possible to replace organ parts of sick people. Instead of continuously taking drugs for any medical condition. So what that means is that if you have a heart disease and you go to a doctor, the doctor will could take a sample from that your diseased heart, send it to the biotech companies, which are actually most of them in this category are owned by Bill Gates. They will now clone exactly that heart of that person. And how will they do this? They will take the cell the doctor sent them and remove the nuclear material, that's the nucleus that has all the genetic information. Now, they will get the egg of a woman, or eggs of women, because they will need several eggs for this. They will remove the nucleus on that egg and then transfer the nucleus from that disease heart into that egg. So that's what we call somatic cell nuclear transfer. So when they transfer it and then they keep it to in a culture to grow into a heart, replicating the exact heart of that diseased person. But now that heart will be brand new without disease. They can now send that heart back to the doctor and they will now implant it into the patient. And of course the person must have paid maybe $2 million or $1 million or whatever the cost involved. But this process of doing this is a manual process. That means making this transfer into the egg of a woman. So the eggs of women could be taken in hundreds just to do one procedure. So they will need about 100 million eggs, which will come from 10 million women. So when they looked at the map of the world and saw where on earth can we get up to 10 million women to donate egg?
Okay.
The planned genocide is restricted to Nigeria. But one has to understand, why do they need to kill the doctors? They kill the farmers because they wanted to make sure they eliminate all the seed growers in the country. So when they eliminate the seed growers, the natural seeds will never be available again. And how they did that was very simple. What they did was that they just gave 14 million cell phones to all Nigerian farmers, so they could track those people who were being paid for seeds. So when other farmers go to them, they go to buy seeds, and then they know that this person was being paid for seeds, so he's the one selling the seeds. So they now use the GPS coordinates on these so-called electronic wallets, which are just cell phones, to target all of them and eliminate them. When you eliminate the natural seed growers, there will be no other alternative to the GMO, genetically modified organisms, foods and seeds. So they brought these seeds as improved seeds. The other farmers, they drove them into IDP camps and came to these IDP camps under the different NGOs and international agencies and presented these GMO seeds. So the farmers will now leave. They will temporarily halt their military activities in those areas, so the farmers will go and resettle. When they resettle, they start planting the GMO seeds. Once you plant the GMO seeds that first time, that first seed you get from that your maize, if you eat it, that will be the last you are going to eat. Because if you take the seed from that GMO corn and plant it, it will not grow. The gene that allows replication has been switched off. So you have to go back to the person who produced the initial seed. That is, in this case in Nigeria, it will be Monsanto. Between 2015 and 2018, 37,500 people, victims, were killed by Boko Haram. These were farmers. Then of these 37,500, 32,000, that's 85% were Muslims. 5,500 were Christians. And in states like Zamfara, 60% of the victims were Hausa, 40% were Fulani. So it became clear that this has nothing to do with Islamic terrorism. It has to do with elimination of all the seed growers. Okay. Now they have eliminated the seed growers. Okay. Now they're moving into the second phase of their program. Now, when the farmers go to them, now we now depend exclusively on the GMOs.
Okay. So you mean we not depend on GMOs right now?
Exactly. Okay. Because without the GMOs, you cannot really get seeds, unless we are getting seeds from different African countries and some places. Some places in the south, especially southwest, and some parts of southeast, we can still get our own seeds because the Boko Haram have not really infiltrated them. But they are trying to do that. The next phase is whereby they will have total monopoly of the seeds. And then they will tell the farmers, you want us to give you seed? Okay, we can give you seed, but on the premise that you must tell your wife and daughters to go and donate their ovarian eggs. And why do they have to do that? They have to do that because the Western countries need these ovarian eggs for cloning. And when he called us, and I must say, I was physically present when Bill Gates called us through the General Electric, who he awarded the contract to build 260 hospitals in Nigeria, so that it will be at these his hospitals they will be harvesting these organs and harvesting these eggs. So he will now take us out of the health sector. He invited the leaders in the private health sector and said, okay, look, I'm ready to offer you money to leave the healthcare sector. We told him before the executives of GE that he is mad and insane to demand such a thing.
To leave medical practice.
That we should leave medical practice. And then he will pay us, no matter the amount of dollars we ask for. So we said, you are mad. We are not going to do that, and to hell with you.
Is that really?
We told him off before the executives of, I was personally present. The lab people, the president and secretaries of the lab, National Organization of the Lab, laboratory scientists was there. The president and secretary of the pharmacy, community pharmacists was there. And we told him to his face, to his presence, because they were talking on, it was a telecom conference, and then the executives of General Electric were there at their headquarters in Abuja. So we told him off that you cannot do that, even with all your money and all your thing, is not going to be possible. Now, since we rejected that offer, he has moved to his second option. Okay, eliminate, kill all these doctors, and then take over the health care. And he told us they have already taken off the whole government hospitals. They bought the federal medical centers, they bought the university teaching hospitals.
All right. So the next clip I want to play for you is from Kenya. Now, when I said that if it has to do with Bill Gates, it is about money, it's about business, it's about achieving and actualizing his dream of not having so many people on the planet Earth, because the Earth, according to him and his like, Earth is already overpopulated, all right? But I'm not going to go into all that because of YouTube policies. Now, listen to this young man here who is a Kenyan.
Okay. I told you now in 1992, they realized first, for us to control people, we first have to reduce their population. Because you cannot control 8 billion people under your rules. They decided and realized the first thing they have to combat population is to control the food. Because you control the food, you control the masses. And that is why you'll notice in this country that a majority of policies that have been happening for the last 10 years are policies that will ensure no one can be able to farm, and it will all lead to what we call complete takeover of food and agricultural practices from individuals to the globalist organizations. Let me make it clear. Their main objective is to control food and food production. So the best way to control food and food production is to ensure production of food is in their hands. But these people are so smart and they realize the only way to do it is not by force, but through policies. So what do? We have to create policies in all these different countries that will ensure we are the guys controlling food. And they started with food production. Today, in this country, a majority of the food we eat are GMO food. These GMO seeds are controlled by the same globalists I'm talking about. The biggest companies in the world, Monsanto, Cargill, DuPont, they're the guys who own all these seeds. During Kiunjuri's time in Uhuru Kenyatta's government, they brought in policies that gave those companies power in this country. They brought in policies and they were able to patent their seeds in this country today. Obina, in Kenya today, it is a crime to share organic seeds with my neighbor. If you're my neighbor and you need seeds to plant, it is a crime for me to give you my seeds, which are not patented. But who are the people who are owning these patented seeds? It's the globalists. So they can decide whether to sell it to you or not to sell it to you. And they'll decide to sell at their own price. GMO seeds are what you call terminator seeds. Once you plant them, you can never replant them. Sure. So you have to go back to the supplier and buy from him at his price. Today we are there. How did you reach there? Go and do your research. Check how much a kilo of GMO tomato seeds are. A kilo. The cheapest is 10 million shillings. Go and Google. Best quality is about 70 million shillings. Google. The information is out there. So they are taking us to a direction that will ensure in the next 5-10 years, there is no farmer who can afford to do farming. Look at the games that was played here with fake fertilizer. Can you anticipate the food shortage that will be here by end of the year? Out of 100 farmers who've done farming this year, Oga, how many will be able to plant next year? Look at the laws that are being put. The other day, they proposed another bill to have a bill that anyone who is engaging in agricultural practices must have a certificate or a degree. So what does that mean? Wow. You cannot do farming without a certificate. 2 days ago, they introduced another law. It's called the Livestock Bill 2024, which was tabled by Kimani Ichung'wah on Friday. It says it is going to regulate livestock production and livestock input and production in this country. Number one, it will ensure any person is not allowed to process or to produce animal feed without certification from them. And it has a fine of 500,000 shillings. You cannot produce your own food and even sell to your neighbor. Number two, it stipulates it will give regulations to all inputs. Inputs, I'm talking of food, I'm talking of medication, everything. We will have a guideline. And if you use anything other than the input, you feed them what they don't want you to feed them, there is a fine of 1 million shillings or 2-year jail term. Number three, it proposes introduction of new institutions to govern this activity. There's what we call livestock market.
So in conclusion, maybe you didn't understand what that man meant by saying that it is now a crime to share an organic seed with your neighbor. Now, it comes down to what it is. Now, it was said that this GMO seed, once you plant it on your soil, now it also modifies the soil. Now, you cannot come back the next year and say, okay, I want to plant another species, the organic, crop or seed on that same soil. It will not yield because now this other one that you did last year had the capacity of modifying the soil, so it will neutralize whatever you had on the ground. Now, come to this point. When it was organic, farmers have a way of preserving seeds against the next time of planting, against the next time of farming. So they will take from their harvest, the one they have preserved for planting again, and they will use that next year or whatever they want to. But unlike that, this GMO seed, not like that. Now, if you must plant after harvesting the one you planted this year and you want to plant again, you will need to go back to those that sold it to you. So now you are now a slave to. So it will get to that point where it becomes their exclusive right to decide whether to give it to you or not to give it to you. Now, at the end of the day, what happened in Egypt? Egyptians sold their lands and became a slave. They became slaves to Pharaoh, so that they could eat, so that they could feed themselves. You don't understand. That is where we're going. It will get to the point where the farmers may not even be able to make enough money to return for the next year planting. And so now it takes us back to what Philip Njemanze said, that Bill Gates, told them. Is it making sense? Oh God. Now that is where it is a terrible scheme. It is so deadly. Somehow, sometimes you need to ask yourself, these people, what kind of mind, what kind of heart do they have? Is it that they were taken to a room where their human heart was evacuated and something else was used to replace their hearts? Because I cannot understand this. Anyways, they claim that it is safe. We pray that it is safe. But I just want to whip in, whether you're in Nigeria or not. Now, there should be a concerted effort to preserve what God has given to us. So if you are from the east, southeast, southwest, where these things have not completely penetrated in, how do we even know it, since you don't even have the technology to test and to know what you are being sold? Fortunately, most of the things that are transported down to the west, the south, is they come from the north. I mean, the foods. But I thank God that there is an awakening in the south now, that a lot of people are going into farming, and we have a lot of landmass southwest, south, a lot of landmass that people can use actually independent of this pollution. At the end of the day, it is still what it is. May God save us and preserve us from these people. I just want to be choosy about my words. I don't want to accuse anybody of, but my people say that where a child is crying and pointing out, when a child is crying and point at a certain direction, it's either his mother or his father, or at least a relation that is within that location. A word is enough for the wise. All right. I think we all should go back farming. In those days, hardly you see a family there that was not excited when the season of farming comes. I wish that we have leaders that have human that will arise and make agriculture a southern part, and also those in the north. I think that now that it has not come to the point where it is a crime to share the organic seed, you can reject this, you can say no to it. But how do they do it? When, according to Philip Njemans, that was why the insecurity that reached right. And who wants to die? A lot had been already. May God save. Thank you very much, and God, let's know what you think about this comment. To think that a nation that was a pride of Africa, that was a darling of all nations in the past, has been reduced to the point where a single individual manipulate, have his way, do anything he likes, allegedly though, and nobody, and he can come in and out the way he wants, and he's even advising the government increase tax. You can understand.
So let's get started with the things that the people have been talking about, and it has to do with a statement credited to Bill Gates, one of the world's richest men. Of course, he's in Nigeria for the Nutri-Vision. He's been advocating against hunger, especially among children and all of that. But he said for Nigeria to fulfill our potential, our tax collection is quite low. If we need to fix things like health and education, and then the tax collection is quite low. But Nigerians are literally, struggling.
Beneath the weight of taxes, right?
The weight of taxes and multiple taxes, which is why the Fiscal Tax Reform Committee is trying to work out how all of this can be reduced to the barest minimum for everybody to appreciate what is coming in 2025. But let's hear what you're saying.
That the devil, thank you and God bless. I sign out with heaviness of heart. I wish there's something I thought is the least, at least, contribution. Thank you very much. Stay blessed. See you in the next video. Till then, from me to you. Shalom.